catalysts absorb all the time, all the externalities, and they don't have a need to get it right the first time. They just have a need to absorb, sit with that, incubate that, and then see where that might take them, especially if they're a leader.
Hi, I'm Shannon Lucas.
And I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And we're the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to catalyzing innate change makers to accelerate positive change. This is our podcast,
Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out,
where we highlight catalysts that are creating amazing change in the world. In this season of the podcast, we are diving deep into the skills that make catalysts successful. And I'm so thrilled today to have Wendy Lea with us. Wendy is a leader practitioner with a multifaceted entrepreneurial and ecosystem background, super relevant today. Equally well-versed in helping large enterprises systematize innovation as she is in creating vibrant startup innovation ecosystems that grow city, regional, state economies. Wendy's an advisory board member serving the Center for American Entrepreneurship and a member on the National Advisory Council for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, a federal committee tasked with developing strategies that strengthen America's ability to compete as the world's leading startup nation and as the world's leading innovator in critical emerging technologies, which I am so deeply passionate about and grateful. Thank you so much, Wendy. She's currently also the co-founder, as if that isn't enough, she's currently also the co-founder and CEO of Energize Colorado. She leads a team there of inspired innovators from Colorado's private, public, nonprofit, and academic communities to revive and invigorate Colorado's economy, mobilizing relief for small businesses, nonprofits, and individuals recovering from the economic impact of COVID-19. Wendy's also an active member and advisor for tech accelerators. She lives right down the road from me in Boulder, Colorado. We're all getting snow today. Thanks for being with us today, Wendy.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yes, we have a snow day for sure.
And in Seattle, where Tracy is. Kismet. Well, I'm just so deeply grateful to have you here today. And I'd love to start off by understanding how you relate to the concept of catalyst.
Well, it's right up my alley. I will say that. So there's deep resonance with what that represents for me. And the word itself is a word that we've become accustomed to. I think the emotionality and the energy around the word is what matters, especially in a large organization, especially in the government. And I want to refer to that often as we go through this interview. So, when I think about it, I think about a flurry of ideas that surround one or a team, the leader or human or a team, and just chasing them and trying to get them in some kind of structure that can be actioned and then experimented around. So I don't think of action as a solitary task. I think it as one thing to do that then will give you new insights. And from those new insights, you might shape shift the overall vision or the goal or even the action a bit, because all actions are not like in a completion activity, right? Sometimes it's just getting to something else. So I'm really struck by the word, and I'm struck by, in preparing for this particular time together, I don't know that I was born as a catalyst, but I would say I've been observed as one. And when I say that, I mean, I'm down with ambiguity. I'm down with not all the data, lined up in a linear fashion. I'm down with taking risk where I can test out my hypothesis. And I'm not trying to be jargony like a startup entrepreneur. I'm just saying, before I would take action as a catalyst or lead a team as a catalyst, I would have a hypothesis. I would have a sense of a couple of milestones. I would be really okay screwing up. and iterating along the way. But that kind of swirl, that motion, it is naturally nonlinear. And therefore, ergo, large organizations in particular, especially our federal government, which I'm work with a lot these days, and our state government, that's nerve-wracking. They like to talk about it, but being part of it is really not core to the way they operate. So sometimes they have councils and they bring on people like me that never do the homework as asked, that don't always follow the yellow brick road but I'm absorbing, catalysts absorb all the time, all the externalities, and they don't have a need to get it right the first time. They just have a need to absorb, sit with that, incubate that, and then see where that might take them, especially if they're a leader.
Mm-hmm.
That's my point of view. How does that sound?
It sounds amazing. And there's some really interesting points in there. We've never used the language absorb the externalities in that way, but I really love that. And there's an emotional labor component to that too, that, I'd love to double click on, but
yeah.
I am curious. I have to ask for Tracy, the researcher, when you say that you weren't born, but you were observed, is there a moment back in your life that you can be like, this is when I started showing up that way? Or where in your journey would you say that's where the pivot was in my catalyst journey?
Yeah, interesting. Well, I am the oldest in my family. My mother had me as a very young person, 17, and she was very creative. And so I was always in her swirl, yet I had a need to provide structure for us because that was not her jam. So I got the best of both worlds because I was called on early, like 5 years old, to help not just be mom's helper, but just find structure that we could live in. Yet I was enamored and constantly absorbing her creativity. She was afraid of nothing. And so she would always give us lots of room. I'm the oldest of 4, to do whatever. Like there was not like you have to go to bed at a certain time, and like all the other moms did. And she had no domestic capability. So here I was I lived in her light. Yes, I lived in her swirl and her creative swirl. I had this potential that was triggered by all that the space she created for us, yet I wanted to make progress, so I think early I observed myself having some level of anxiety about that duality, right? And I still have that today. I mean, I have anxiety before any kind of big meeting. It's not like paralyzing,
right?
Just that I feel creative and excited, and I feel responsible for catalyzing the conversation to take people out of their normal little structure. Now we're going to ask the board what they think. All that's boring to me. Yet this other part of me, this other little girl, wants to produce.
Yes.
She wants to achieve. She wants to get a gold star.
Yep.
No, but think about that. So that has been my world. And I've had lots of professional chapters, as you know, and most of them, it's not like I researched down to the wire to make sure I was a good fit. I had instinct that was supported by observations, general conversation. And then I said, gonna go for that. I'm going to do my best. And that came with a lot of anxiety because best is relative, So it was a very early thing, but it was about leading basically an early family situation that was messy, creative, and needed a little structure.
Thank you for that incredibly vulnerable answer. Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting the ways that our youth impacts how we end up showing up in the world, and certainly the threads with Catalyst and that anxiety, that edge of anxiety that drives us to be the get shit done person, right? But then
GSD, yes.
yeah, but then the
GSD.
impacts that has on our personal resiliency. I mean, there's a trade-off there, right? And so I think, again, thank you for sharing so deeply. It might be a great pivot then to talk about some of the skills that have made you successful. Like maybe they're connected to that, but like how, I mean, because you've been incredibly successful. So like, what are one or two skills?
I would say one is a skill managing ambiguity, like just, and that sounds a little in conflict, like contrary. Can you manage ambiguity? Well, I think recognizing that it is there, right, helps you manage it, and not having to have the answer too fast. So ambiguity is really an opportunity to explore and to bring in these externality observations, not to run too fast for solution, right? Like people talk like, let's really understand the problem. Let's don't go to the solution space too soon. Now, and that there's like a balance there, especially in a large organization where you have quarterly results and you have structure and hierarchy for good reason. This is not just random. Let me lock everyone down in some kind of structure so you'll feel small and not able to, and not agile. That's not the reason you have structure in a large organization. Remember, I work a lot with the government. You have it because of the nature of that organization's value and how that value gets distributed, right? And so you can't just run around and not know when the quarter is going to end and what's expected of 100,000 people or 400,000 people. So I respect knowing, I respect structure, but I know that in my role as a catalyst, it's the ability to deal with ambiguity, which has served me best. And by the way, Energize Colorado was born in the midst of a COVID response activity. No one knew anything. Nothing. We didn't know when it was going to end, how many people were going to die because of it, what the impact was going to be on small businesses or any business. Think about that. That's the work I do from Zoom, not ever having met all these people. So I lead through a digital mechanism without knowing the beginning and end of anything as a volunteer. That is a skill, right?
Yeah, it's a massive skill.
The core is not knowing.
Yeah. And implied in there, which is, I mean, I've struggled with this, which a lot of catalysts struggle with, the tension that you talked about, like we talked about the corporate world, the quarterly earnings, the drumbeat of the quarterly earnings, how are you demonstrating progress? And the other thing that you said, which is like not rushing to the result too soon. And there's one team, person, leader, whatever, that gets really caught in the middle of those two things. And that's the catalyst leader. And so I'm wondering if, in your managing through ambiguity, like how do you help the bridging back and forth between those two paradigms in one organization?
Well, let's use the word Tantra, because that's what tension is. It's a mystical energy, right? That can be restrictive or can be freeing. And I think the average person on the average day, and no one wants to say they are that, we know that, right? But there are more average people on average days than not. So when you're surrounding the middle of that bell curve on a team, in a business unit, in an organization, in the Department of Commerce, right? I mean, people are rushing to the middle, because that is a safe place where it seems like there's some clarity about the next step, even if there's confusion and ambiguity around it, right? So I do think the balance is only struck in these clusters, right? Because the catalyst is always pulling forward and they're trying to bust up the clusters. But there's a lot of intimidation there. And so I think good catalysts respect the fact that there has to be some clusters around these humans that cannot be spread in this tantra of predictability versus complete lack of predictability, right? And just respect that. Because at the end of the day, when we're talking about organizational performance, really what we're talking about is human performance in clusters around teams and business units, et cetera. So to the degree the leader of an innovation effort, the catalyst, can have some insight into those clusters and those humans in those clusters, then they're able to shuck and jive a little bit, right? And not jerk them all the way to the end of the edge. So there's so much tension, they get paralyzed. I've really noticed that as I've matured, I won't say get older, but as I've matured, I've noticed that my ability to be in awe and wonder and see and not worry is so different, especially for very young people who are just getting started. Like with all the crazy in our world right now and the divisiveness, it paralyzes them. And it makes me wonder, like, well, don't you have initiative? Like the old me would say, well, why don't you have initiative? Like, they're like, what? Like, I don't even understand what's going on. Like, I can't even keep up with you, with the way you think and what you're looking at and why you aren't looking at this. And so being respectful and mindful of these humans in these clusters and where they are and where they center is really essential in a large organization, because otherwise you're just perceived as a lot of crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. And disrespectful.
Yes.
Come on, let's don't forget that word, because that's a real word. Because just because they're following the yellow brick road that was outlined for them does not mean they don't produce good work.
Right.
It just means they do that differently. And they're not going to put an extra green or a red color in their yellow brick road. They're looking for yellow, right? And so I have learned to be more tolerant and patient. I've learned to try to be more respectful and observant of how anxiety, confusion, paralysis, shows up in people, especially during COVID. And by the way, you both know we're not through that yet. People are trying to regroup.
Yeah.
We don't know. And I speak for myself there as others. Like, I think I'm ready to get out, and then I get all anxious because, like, what do I wear? Like I used to have all these outfits and clothes and a way of presenting myself. And guess what? After 30 months of doing what I've been doing as a volunteer, leading a bunch of volunteers to help small businesses and try to build products. I don't have an engineer. I don't have a product manager. We're just trying to build products and teams that have passion around certain areas of small business. That's it. Childcare, digital, whatever. And so these are loosely coupled teams, clustered teams. There's no formal structure. So there's a lot of trust that has to be built. Trust comes through consistent conversation and organization towards sometimes a short-term goal, sometimes a long-term goal. But the catalyst sometimes whacks people out.
Yes, we do. Well, that might be a good pivot. I mean, I have so many more questions I want to ask you, Wendy, frankly, but it might be a good pivot into, like, what are your challenges as a catalyst leader? And I mean, it's a really, you're an interesting case point, like starting this whole entire new org with massive ambitions and impact during a time where you probably didn't get to meet a lot of the people. So
No, I still haven't. But think of the word Energize Colorado.
yeah.
I mean, that in itself says a lot. And by the way, one of our co-founders, Eric Matisik, actually came up with that name. I did not, but when he said it to me, I got chills all over me. I said, that's it. It's not like Help Colorado. It's Energize Colorado. So, but my challenge is, I would say my number one challenge is just keeping myself filled up, right? When you are a catalyst, sometimes it can feel, not all the time, like you are a scarecrow in a field and blackbirds are taking one piece of straw out at a time. And they're not doing it to hurt you. They're doing it because they want part of you. But you're not sure what part they want. And you're not even sure what to offer them. They just want to be with. And really, they want to be with this way that you are, because you're consuming a lot, you're moving fast, and they want a little of that. That looks kind of exciting, especially when you're in lockdown. Like, Wendy, how do you do that? Like, how do you get up and talk to 150 people on a Zoom call and you don't even know them? How do you even think about directing and leading? Well, how I do that is I'm on every team, little volunteer team call. Not because I have the answer, because I want to encourage them to stay in problem-solving mode, not just to jump to solution space, and then let us see how we can try to implement that. Like, we had 52 projects going on at the same time, all led by volunteers.
Wow.
And myself and one first-generation college student who's been with me now 3 years, who's frigging awesome. And he will go on to be the governor one day. I'm completely confident of that. He has that natural gift. He's very strategic. He gets stuff done. He's amazing. But you do it because you make a choice, right? Now, but a challenge I have is staying filled up so I can spread that energy and any insight I have. But sometimes I don't even know, like, we have a rural housing initiative. I know nothing about housing. I don't know that much about rural. I know nothing about modular. I know nothing about low income housing, but we had a group who were passionate about it and had expertise, and they brought the partners together. So I show up and learn. How bad is that? It's not bad at all. It's like awesome, because catalysts love learning new things, don't you?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And that's one of our buckets. Yep.
Learn new things.
Yeah.
But challenges are filling myself up, not spreading myself too thin, knowing, here's a challenge for a catalyst, knowing when that assignment is complete.
Yes.
When you have given not just your all, that's so cheeky, but when you have been in your best self long enough to imbue others with enough knowledge, enough skill, enough perspective, which is different from knowledge and skill, so they can carry on and mostly do more than you've ever imagined they could do. Because sometimes catalysts overstay their welcome.
That's it. It is. And we don't know, right? And then it's like we end on this terrible note instead of the high, but the organization doesn't know, they're not used to those trajectories, right? And so they don't know how to support us either.
Because they want structure and they know about beginnings and ends, and they know
Right.
how it has to play out.
Right.
They know how it supports this team and that team.
Yeah.
But this is where catalyst leaders need to pay attention, because it's not get lazy. It's not a lack of discipline. We just get so consumed and we see, the next big thing.
Right.
And we don't take time to say, okay, well, maybe this is a time to begin again. by
Well,
the way.
and it's not normalized for us, right? Like I remember I got
Good
feedback from my
word. That's a good word. It's
I
not
got feedback
normalized.
on my resume and they're like, you jump around too much. And as a catalyst, I was like, I was at 2 companies for 8 years. Like from a catalyst perspective, that's like lifetimes, right? And so there is this perception when we coach with catalysts, like one of their fears is they're going to be perceived as like being all over the place and scattered, when really they were paying attention to where they should have exited the business.
People say to me, because I've done so many things like, well, I don't like, does all that work together? I'm like, it absolutely does. Not just because I did it, because it's like Legos, right? You know how to pull in that assignment or that project or that board or that whatever.
Yeah. And
you don't always build a business around it, but that has been the story of my life as a catalyst.
Yeah.
And by the way, catalyst, one thing about this, it's not about catalyzing today. It's about catalyzing a future experience that no one can define. This is so clear to me with Energize Colorado. I mean, we also deployed $41 million in grants and $9 million in loans, or we're working on that still. But still, the small business ecosystem is not resilient yet. But does that mean I need to continue to double down and figure out why? Do I need to complete? Do I need to look for more gaps? Whatever. So I do think the thing about a catalyst is that they don't know where the end is, yet they don't see it always, but they feel it for them. That's because we're needing another dimension or layer of experience.
That's right. It's amazing. I'm going to get us into the rapid fire questions.
Okay, let's go. Okay.
I just wanted to say the articulation of the scarecrow being pulled apart string by string brought tears to my eyes. It's such a powerful description that I think a lot of catalysts that will resonate. It was just powerful and beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Tracy, over to you.
Over to me. All right, Wendy, what is one thing that you do to be ready for a big meeting?
Clear my mind. I use that Insights app, and there's a bell, and I take at least 2 minutes, sometimes more, and just try to wash it all through. And I put on my lipstick.
Oh God, that was the best and unexpected ending right there. It was like the deep, like, clear my mind, I'm with you, and put on my lipstick.
I'm from the South. I got to have my lipstick on.
Thank you for that giggle and that amazing gift. All right. What is your favorite way to spend a free day?
Walking my dog, hanging out at Sanitas right behind my house. Nature is a great healer for me, which is why I moved back here.
It sounds like you don't get enough these days.
I do not. I do not. I sit and I Zoom and I sit. And then I do my obligatory Pilates twice a week and my obligatory hot yoga twice a week, but just walking slowly, right? And just observing the snow or the trees or the grass or the birds and my dog. That's really what I need the most of. And just making time, because no one's going to give you time, is really critical to my sanity.
Yeah,
I'm missing it too. So maybe we can be walking. Our first date can be a walking date.
That's cool.
Let's do that. Who is your favorite famous catalyst, alive or dead, and why?
Okay. So when I first saw that in the prep, I thought, well, it's Jane Fonda. And, you know, for all the reasons we know, and she just continues like an Energizer bunny, like she has so many passions. However, you know, she's still alive and we're happy that she is. My current girl crush is on the Secretary of Commerce for the United States, and her name is Gina Raimondo.
Yes.
My goodness sakes, what a joy it's been to get to know her and work a bit with her through my NACI assignment. She's 52, you know, born and raised Rhode Island, was a VC, then was the governor there, lots of public service in her professional life. And now she is the Department of Commerce, Secretary of the Department of Commerce for the United States. Now, here's why she inspires me. And she is such a catalyst. And here's why. One bill that's now passed, it's called Chips and Science Act. Okay. Won't get into that, but that sucker has been hanging around the hoop for 4 years with a goal of ensuring the United States maintains its competitiveness against China. Now I'm tightening all this up because I know we don't have much time. She, not single-handedly, that would be a stretch, but she decided she would work with the Biden administration through her role as the, Secretary of Commerce and reframe that bill. And she cracked the whip, reframed the bill. It had already passed Senate bipartisanly, if that's even a word. And she was trying to get through the markups with Congress, and that was just too hard. She put a pause, reframed it, and got that over the line. Amazing. And you can read about her. Sunday New York Times, there's a whole article about her. It's a profile. When you read that, you will get what I'm talking about. She is a catalyst. My guess is one day she will be the president of the United States. She's young enough. She's not just ambitious. She is a contributing force for big business and small business.
Go, Gina. We'll have to send her a book when your podcast comes out.
You will. She's fantastic. Gina Raimondo and Jane Fonda. There you go.
Thank you. Those were amazing. As we wrap up our conversation today, Wendy, any call to action for our listeners?
I think the call to action is for sure, keep your book handy. Because there's so many awesome books out, right? But, there's sometimes when the student is ready, the teacher will come. That's a, old cliche. And I think that happened for me just in preparing for this. So I do think have to keep your mind turned upside down often and not just read things that you agree with, but read things that maybe didn't look that interesting. But you think, okay, I need to freshen up my perspective. I need to get myself upside down a little bit, let the blood come into my head so I can see the world differently. And the other action is just be responsible for your potential as a human. Don't delegate that to your mom, to your husband, to your boss, to your colleagues. That's your job. So the question is, what are you doing to achieve your potential as a human? And if you can really understand yourself, you will make progress towards that end. That's all I got.
Well, I have goosebumps everywhere. So all you got is pretty amazing. Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you, Wendy. This has been such joy for me today, like oxygen. So it's a delight to have you on the show.
Yeah.
Now you can see why I've been raving about her, Tracy.
I already believed you, but now I have lived it for sure.
You're sweet. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. And it was a joy being with you both and meeting you, Tracy, for the first time. And Shannon, we'll get together. It's just, we're in a little tight little sprint.
It's all good, Wendy. It's all good. And I just want to say thank you for the work for the Energize Colorado. It's really important work that you're doing. So thank you.
I love the state and I love contributing to the vibrancy over time.
Yeah.
Okay. And see you later.
Thank you for our listening audience. If you'd like to learn more about how to accelerate positive change, go to our website at www.catalystconstellations.com.
And be sure to check out our book, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, the one that Wendy was mentioning. If you have other catalysts in your life, hit the share button and send a link their way.
Thanks again.
Thanks again.